Hello and good morning, everybody. Welcome back to AP Human Geography. Today, you can see from the title, we're going to be talking a little bit about some review. So let's get started. Couple quick notes first up on reviewing for the AP test. First of all, we'll be posting a number of assignments from here up to the test in Canvas. That's the simplest thing. What can you do? Simply log in and complete the review assignments. Second, make sure you spend time consistently. It doesn't necessarily have to be each day, but it needs to be multiple times per week, right? If you want to do well on the AP test, that's the commitment. It's always been that way. So spend time each day. Use flashcards or Quizlet for your vocabulary. Go through your notes and review, create new outlines, make thought webs, do something active while you review your notes. And in these days and times, you can meet virtually with some classmates, FaceTime, use Zoom, Google Hangouts, whatever you want to do. But make sure you organize your study time. Pick a few topics, right? Maybe start with the stuff from way back in the beginning of the year. But pick a few topics for each review session. Set a time for that session and how much time that you want to spend on each topic. That will help you organize your time and make sure that you kind of achieve your goals. Make sure your time is well spent. A few other things you can do. AP Review on YouTube is coming. Their first review sessions are being scheduled for the next few days. And then iScore 5 is a great mobile app for both Android and Apple devices. It does cost a few dollars, but it is really excellent. My students who have used it in the past always highly recommend it to others. And of course, there's some other review books out there as well. You may have siblings with other copies, that sort of thing. Anyways, real quick, let's bump out of the PowerPoint. Let's go to the AP YouTube review playlist. Again, this is from College Board themselves. You can see down at the bottom, they've got their first unit reviews scheduled for April the 9th. So they'll go back and start with some population stuff. So definitely check those out. They'll be live on that day and time, but then they'll also be just posted there forever on YouTube. iScore 5, here's their website. Of course, you'll need to check it out online in the app stores, but excellent. Does cost a few dollars, but highly encourage you to check it out and use it. Okay. So let's get back to the matter at hand. How should I study? I love going through notes and kind of making new outlines or making thought webs. You can see why I like thought webs. I've used them myself for a long, long time, going back to high school and college as a student. Anytime I need to review stuff that I'm teaching, I typically use this strategy as well. So here's one I made for the review topic for today. We'll go back over this at the end of the review lesson. So what we want to do here is examine some basic topics for review, and we're going to just take a look at some current real-life scenarios. So essentially, AP Human Geography is just human activity, and so we see it all over the place in the newspapers, in our communities, etc. So what we're going to talk about today is go back to cultural geography, okay? And we're going to look at a few subtopics. We're going to look at cultural patterns involving religion. And in doing so, we're going to cover ideas about distribution of certain religions, diffusion, how have they spread, if they've spread. We can take a look at ways that religion impacts the cultural landscape, maybe through their calendars and how they mark different events in their history, whether it's a celebration or more of a somber remembrance, and other ways that a particular religion can impact the landscape. So our specific example is simply an article I found in KSL. I think it was like a week or two ago now, but it's about the Hindu faith and some specific religious celebrations, very important, but they're being impacted by the interventions for the COVID-19 pandemic. So let's take a look. So I just screenshotted a few images here. You can see the headline, virus lockdown changes how Hindus celebrate the holy period. So what we know is that we've got a particular period on the Hindu calendar. We can see in the article over here on the left side, there's a 9-day period. So it's not just one day, right? But it's a multi-day period. Helps us understand the importance of it. It kind of goes along with something that is generally considered the Hindu New Year and culminates within the 9-day period with a single festival, Ramanavi. So There's other ways that this is being seen. We're seeing it listed out here that there's fasting, there's worshiping together, big collective worship, and then a variety of other ways to celebrate that. And when we get into different ways to describe religious faiths, we can talk about some of their beliefs or doctrines. And in this case, Hinduism tends to be more on the polytheistic side of things. And so, particularly, the god Ram of Hinduism is going to be one of the main points of celebration here. So, we've got this real life situation set up for us. We've got this festival that usually happens, but the way it's going to be carried out is impacted by these government interventions for the pandemic. So let's break this down in an AP sense. What terms can we use to characterize and describe the Hindu faith, right? We want some basic detail there. Second, where, right? We always want to ask that question of where. Where is the Hindu faith predominantly found? Next, has that faith moved? Now, this article goes on to discuss Hindu families that are both in India as well as in the United States. So, can we describe the diffusion of Hinduism to the US and other places? And then last, we get to the why care, right? So, how does this impact Hindus particularly? And how do these pandemic policies impact other faiths as well? So, let's take a look. I've just separated these out. And I would encourage you to pause the video and actually work on this yourself. So pause. I'm going to go through these ideas with you, but pause, work on these yourself. You can make a little thought web or notes outline or jot it down or whatever. But that's what I would encourage you to do. Okay, so let's take a look at how we would answer these. So first, some basic details. How can we characterize and describe the Hindu faith? One of the terms we learned was ethnic faith, and that's opposed to a universalizing faith. So we know that ethnic faiths typically are maybe built around a particular group of people in a particular place. And so that's certainly true of Hinduism, based on the Indian people in the subcontinent of South Asia. We can also label Hinduism as generally polytheistic. So, as opposed to, say, Judaism or Christianity being monotheistic, where there's only one God that's particularly worshipped, then in polytheistic religions, we know that there can be more than one. So, where is the Hindu faith predominantly found? Well, if we go through by world region first, we would say, well, hey, that would be South Asia, right? Generally. If we get down to the country level, we would say that's primarily in India. Then lastly, even though it's an ethnic faith, is it, and doesn't, so that means it doesn't typically look to spread itself or convert others, is it other places? Well, the answer is yes. And we see that in the article, and we should know that from other sources as well. So let's ask that question. How can we describe the diffusion of Hinduism to the US? So first of all, we would use this type of diffusion to describe it, relocation. We know that means people are going to physically pick themselves up and move, and that's going to be how they spread something, in this case, a religion. Now, other ways we can look at it, in the US particularly, you most likely have economic opportunity. We can identify this push and pull factor. Why did people leave India, and why did they end up in the United States? If we looked somewhere else like the United Kingdom, though, we could certainly look at economic opportunity, but also something like cultural and political connections. South Asia had previously been a British colony, and so there's these natural connections there that would create that movement pattern, that relocation diffusion. Okay, let's quickly go out to these other religious faiths. Okay, we've taken a look at one particular example. Instead of doing the collective worship, going to temple, doing all these regular celebrations, India's on lockdown just like many other places. And so we're not going to be seeing that in the landscape. Right, the internet is our friend. I just kind of went out and collected several different, screenshotted several different headlines. One from the Al Jazeera news group talking about prayers being restricted across the Middle East among coronavirus fears. Fridays are typical for big collective Islamic prayers, and in many places, those are canceled. Let's see, the second one is from The Economist. It's all about how prayer in general is changing as a result of pandemic responses. Again, generally canceling, encouraging collective worship to not happen. People do that at home. And then lastly, let's do a local example. This is off DeseretNews.com, and you can see this article if you look at the text. The general conference for the LDS faith has not been canceled, but it's just been simply moved online. And so that means that if we were going to have maybe a couple 100,000 people in Salt Lake coming to the city for that general conference, those people are no longer really invited. The conference will kind of go on through webcams and stuff like that, but it's not going to be something that people are going to sort of make that pilgrimage here for. So just a little local example of how pandemic responses have impacted those patterns and processes, the way we see different religious faiths in the landscape. Okay, so let's go back to this this little study web that I made personally. So I put this PowerPoint together, and this kind of made this. But you can see these things help us really get into those specific details from general to specific. So, for instance, we've got cultural geography, religious patterns, Hindu distribution, South Asia, India, right? So I can run through that really quickly. And I can add all these other concepts. And then once I'm done, I can kind of see how they're related. I can make sure I see those connections. So these are, again, really nice tools to use for active studying. And they are there's a lot of bang for your buck there. So got a couple bonus topics. Here's a New York Times article from today. Political geography and migration. Headline is 8 United Kingdom doctors died from coronavirus. All of them were immigrants. Now, we know that the United Kingdom just made official their leaving of the European Union. A good portion of the idea of why they should leave that supranational group was this anti-immigrant sentiment, right? Open borders are kind of the thing in the European Union we talked about. Turns out many Britons were not big fans of that. However, the flip side is about 30% of the British healthcare system is staffed by foreign-born doctors. Many of these doctors come from places that were previous colonies, like India. Sudan is a country highlighted in the article. And so they're playing a key role in the health service. They're on the front lines of the pandemic response, and they're sacrificing their lives. So it's one of those interesting migration topics, has these political implications in terms of why should, say, the UK leave or stay in the EU. And we're dealing with some of these deaths as a result of that. Last, here's a fun one. How is Utah connected to the pandemic and weird things like the toilet paper shortage? So this is off of KSL Today as well. Box elder plant running 24/7 to keep up with toilet paper demand. So here in Utah, we're certainly part of the global economy, the nationwide economy. So let's hop out of the PowerPoint. Where is the Box Elder Procter & Gamble plant? They are running 24/7. Let's head over to Google Maps. Box Elder County, we know, is up in this northern northwest section. And we know the article said it was in Bear River City. So Bear River's up here. Should be in Box Elder County. Oh, here's Bear River City. So where could a toilet paper plant be? If we take a look at our satellite imagery, it's not here, right? In the center, that's all agricultural land. But what could this large white building be over here? If we go down, turns out that's the exact plant in question from the newspaper article, a Procter & Gamble toilet paper plant. So that toilet paper being made there and being shipped out through different distribution systems to stores, not only here, but nationwide. So a little bit of economic geography and interconnection there. There we go. So reviewing for the AP test. Little lesson number 1, and we'll come back with more very soon. Thanks, guys.